So these are the Winspace Hyper Wheels, and if you're wondering what Lun is written on the box, it's a Chinese word for wheels. Now you've probably already seen a few videos on the Winspace Hyper Wheels, but these are the 65mm deep section. That's the deepest section you can get. And no, they don't come in the butterfly weave effect, only in this matte finish on the 65, so that's that out of the way. So the wheels come with spare spokes, 2 valve extenders, and the rim tapes are already installed on the wheels. Now these rim tapes enable the wheels to be tubed or tubeless, hence the valves are already installed on there for tubeless. So just take them out if you're going to use tubes, of course. Now with the spare spokes, don't need to panic if you don't fix wheels, that's fine. If you have an accident and the spoke does break, you can always take your wheel to the bike shop with the spokes anyhow and they'll fix it for you. Now these rims have what's called zero coating on them, so there's no clear lacquer over the top, it's just your carbon fibre finished, sanded down and some decals whacked on there. Taking the rims outside in the sunlight, you can clearly see it's a patchwork of various textures and marks resulting from not having a clear coat. This here reminds me of grooves in a record. Remember records? This one here looks like very fine lines on a silk cloth. Here you can see small circular lines. At a guess, I'd say it's from an orbital sander. So you may or may not like the raw effect, and it may or may not match your bike's paintwork. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Now with the sizing, the inside width of the rim, 19mm, the outside 25.8. Now I say on the website, these rims will take anywhere between 23mm and 45mm tyres. That's pretty big, 45mm. There's a little ventilation hole on each side of the rim, that's always a good thing. With the rim shape, it's roundish where the spokes are, of course, and then it goes quite flat. So it's definitely not a round rim, it's not really toroidal either, and it's not a pointy rim. So it's got its own shape there. 65mm, you'd expect I've done a bit of testing and at least it has some sort of aerodynamic advantages. The hyper wording on there is not a sticker, it doesn't easily come off. It's sort of a very low profile decal and it's glued on there quite well, so it's hard wearing, it's not going to come off. You'd have a hard time trying to get that off. If you run your fingers along and push on the rim tape, you'll feel over the spoke hole there's a hole in the top part of the rim, so it means there's holes to get access to the nipples. So let's peel back the rim tape and have a look inside. So straight away we can see the nipple with the end of the spoke poking through there. Looking over to the right wall, there's a lot of white marks, could be just leftover epoxy, and then you can see wrinkling straight away, wrinkling there. Tilting the camera forward and you can see the nipple which belongs to the next spoke. I'm also shining a torch through that next hole so it lights everything up. You can see a lot better. So you can definitely see a lot of wrinkling going on, especially on the right side there. Left side doesn't seem to be too bad. No, I've spoken too soon. There's a lot of wrinkling going on there on the left side as well. Now it's a bit too dark to look down the other end without the torch. So we'll move along to the next hole. Again, a lot of white marks, probably from epoxy. There doesn't seem to be as much wrinkling. There's some long lines and what looks to like some small sheets running upwards. It looks different than the other hole, doesn't it? It doesn't look like it's going to be the same rim. Ah, there's some wrinkling. Again, that centre strip, right where the nipples are, that wraps around the inner part of the rim, is nice and smooth. So it's probably long strips of carbon fibre sheeting wrapped around. That's why it's not so lumpy. And just shining the torch further down as far as we can see. Right. Okay, let's have a look at the Reynolds rims from the Canyon Air Road. These are also 65mm deep. So there's the nipple and it's slightly different than the Winspace. And the wrinkling, yep, definitely wrinkling going on. It's not as close together, it's a bit more sparse. But there's definitely a fair bit of wrinkling going on here. Did not expect that of Reynolds rims. Okay, let's try a different hole. Pretty much looks like the other hole. Again, it's wrinkling of the carbon fibre and longer wrinkles rather than smaller, closer together ones. And another hole, and that almost looks the same as well. Let's have a look inside an old pair of Easterns. These are one of the first EC90 rims that came out, and they're a 50mm deep section. Spoke and nipples gone rusty, that's how old they are. Looking all around at the side walls, is there any wrinkling there at all? Just a few marks. Let's have a look in another hole. We're looking in the valve hole this time. You can see, there you go, you can see through to the hub, but there's no wrinkling again. Isn't it amazing? An older rim made so well. Now have a look in this Yo-Yo C50 rim. It's a sat rim, so as you can see there's no holes for the nipples, only one hole, the valve hole. The valve hole is a bit smaller than the spoke holes. It's difficult to angle the camera and get a good view. And it's looking pretty clean. There's a line there, possibly a wrinkle. Other side. Nipple starting to corrode there. These wheels have done 14,500 kilometres. And it's a bit of a line coming either side of that nipple. Otherwise, very good. The other thing about deeper section rims, it'll transmit the road vibration quicker through to the frame to you. But a deeper section rim with shorter spokes also gives you a more rigid wheel, so good for sprinting. One of the positive aspects of a heavier wheel is once you get them going and being more aerodynamic, then you should have a higher top speed. Now with the spokes, they're not metal, they're carbon fibre, so they're lighter than their metal counterparts. Now these wheels are disc brake wheels, as most wheels are going to be nowadays. The rotor's on this side, so the spokes cross over each other here. In fact, they cross over just at the hub and then here, so it's effectively a two cross. On the non-rotor side, they're a radial. Now you'll find that most wheels built for disc brakes have a cross on both sides, but these ones are crossing only on the rotor side and radial on the non-rotor side. Now the spoke count, if you go from the valve, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it's 14 spokes on the disc side, on the rotor side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the non-rotor side. So there's not many spokes in there at all. With the rear wheel, we've got cross here and cross there. So effectively a two cross again. And we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 spokes on the clutch side. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spokes on the non-clutch side. On the disc rotor side for this rear wheel, there's just radial spokes. Whereas on the disc rotor side on the front wheel, there's crossing. Why they do that, not sure. As you can see, the spokes are all straight pull all the way around on both wheels on both sides. The other thing is here, I notice where they cross is they actually touch. Now, this is not uncommon. On most wheels, they touch as they cross. Now, over time, you pick up small amounts of dirt and it gets in between where these spokes cross here. And as you ride your wheels with your weight on the wheels, as well as the torsional forces that you put on, it causes spokes to flex a little bit. And my concern is where these spokes move and that grip between, especially with carbon fibre spokes, is that going to wear the spoke down at this point and then suddenly snap, your spokes are going to break. Now the way the spokes come out of the hub, this spoke here comes out on this side and goes underneath, so it sort of goes out, under and then back. So this spoke here, starting on the outside of the flange of the hub, goes underneath this spoke here and then it goes up to the rim. This spoke here, starting at the inside on the flange of the hub, goes on the outside of that spoke and then continues on to the hub. So in effect this spoke here is bowing or bending over this spoke underneath here, which bows the other way to get underneath that spoke, and they're touching in the middle. So what I'm asking is, why can't they make the spoke that comes from the outside just go straight to the rim so they don't actually touch? They don't have to go underneath each other, they can just pass each other with a gap in between. Just to show you, here's a wheel that has the spokes that don't touch. Very hard to see, But these are straight pull spokes. The outside spokes just go straight to the rim, and the inside one goes straight to the rim itself, and they don't touch. There's this very small gap. So I guess that's something that we'll find out in the long term as people ride these carbon fibre spokes over time. Now let's do a simple and quick spoke tension test, and you can do this on any wheels at home yourself. Just a piece of plastic like this. This is a plastic tie lever, and we'll go around and you just tap each spoke and you listen. So they're not quite all the same, very close. See these two? So on this side here, this is the rear wheel. On the radial side, that's the side with the rotor. They're not quite all the same tension. Now on the side where your cassette goes, they're pretty good. They're almost exactly the same tension. Let's have a look at the front wheel. On the rotor side, almost all the same. Now the tone of that is slightly lower, so the tension is not quite as great on the front wheel. Listen to that back wheel again. Slightly higher. Could be that the spokes are shorter. I would say that's probably what it is. Now on the non-rotor side. So it seems that on the radials, where they've got the radial spokes, there's a slight difference in tension, but that's pretty good. All round by ear, they're both pretty good. Now let's have a look at the spokes. Take one out of the box, and you'll see at one end it's fixed. Looks like a normal nipple, but it doesn't actually turn. It's fixed, and that goes in the hub there. So that one doesn't move. At this end is where you adjust the tension, which is that end there. And it's done with one of these, so you can reach in 5.5 mil. Okay, and of course on the other side, to hold it, we just use an ordinary spoke key. So spoke key on here, and come in from this side to do the adjustment. Now these being flat bladed spokes, as you build or true the wheel, you can slightly twist the spoke out of alignment. Now with your wheel to be aerodynamic like that, you want all the, say my hand is one of the blade spokes, you want them all to be like that. So as the wind comes across your wheel, it's nice and aerodynamic. If your spoke tends to be like that, then it's going to work against you. The spokes are going to be less aerodynamic. So ideally you want them like that. So let's check and see how good they are on the wheels. So just like in the previous video, we just use this tool and put it on the spoke. So starting at the valve hole, there's our valve. And the size is 1.3 millimeters for these blade spokes. So you just pop the tool on. Doesn't have to go all the way on, it just sits there nicely. And you can see it's pointing straight up and down. That's good. Go to the next one. That's pretty good. Now that one's pointing slightly inwards. Slightly inwards, that one. And that one's pointing slightly outwards. I'll just move the camera back a bit for you. You can see this is pointing outwards a little bit more. So that one's should be back there, but it's out there. So that's not very good. That one's good. That one's good. And that one's good. So we had one in particular was definitely out, and another one wasn't too bad. Now at the hub end, again starting at the valve. You can see that's pointing outwards. So that's slightly twisted. That's also pointing outwards. That's slightly twisted. That's straight. That's good. You can see that. That's straight. That's straight. That's inwards. You can see that pointing inwards. So that needs to be straightened. That's good. And that one's good. So we've had a few on that side, about 3 that need to be straightened. Do the rear wheel. To save time, here's the full results. Any spoke with more than 5% deviation was recorded. None of the spokes were noticeably bad, and overall the wheels were not perfect, but quite acceptable. Now, using our spoke tension meter, we've already done it by ear, but let's just check it digitally. Starting at the valve, 2.78, 2.82, 2.43. Rear wheel. So after measuring both wheels, here's the results on paper, and now let's plug them into the spoke tension calculator, and this is what we get. For the front wheel, every spoke is within 20% tension of each other, and if you look at the round spoke chart, they're all very even, so very good. Rear wheel, and every spoke again is within 20% tension of each other, and looking at the round chart there, they're all very even again. Excellent. Time to de-stress the wheels. Remember, don't do this at home unless you're experienced doing it, because you might put too much pressure on and break your wheels. So this will just relieve any stress that's built up in the wheel. You just very good, nice and strong. No movement. Now, because there's no movement and they're very strong, doesn't mean to go even harder and push more pressure on, because you get to the point where you will do damage. You just need enough pressure. It's a bit more than usual that you would experience riding your bike. No, they're perfect, that's fine, that's good. Very good Winspace there. Now time to swap our truing stands over. This one's good for measuring the trueness of the wheel. Do the rear wheel first. It's basically the high and the low readings. So there we got the lowest, about there. So we can set that to 0. It's very sensitive even moving that. We're measuring 0.01 of a millimetre here. Yeah, close enough, that'll do. There we go, that's pretty much 0. Now we wait for the maximum deflection. 10, 12, 14, 15, 20, 22, 25. There was at 22, say 23. Yeah, about 23. Change the wheels over. Do the front one. Very, very straight. So we've got 12 just back here. At 12 there. 13, 12, 13. You just have to touch this wheel to move it, and it moves that dial. Let's say 13. Now we'll measure the vertical movement. So 18, 19, 20. We just peaked on 20 there. Say 19 because it might have been, oh no, 20. There we go, 20. Right, so we'll say 20 there. So this is the rear wheel vertical deflection. It's gone down to about 80, so the difference between 0 and 80 there is 20. We're going backwards. whichever way you set the dial. You can either put the 0 here or 0 there. So the rear wheel, 20 for vertical. Dishing, that's to find out if your rim is in the centre of your axle ends, and that means it's running in the centre of your forks or the rear stays. You don't want it either side. So it's to do with tracking. I've explained this before in another video, so that your rear wheel following your front wheel as you're riding forward is exactly in line as you're riding. Otherwise, if I'll just exaggerate, your wheel might be out like that, front one either one side or the rear one over the outside, or both, like that. So you want your wheels to be in the middle of your bike, in the middle of your frame, in the middle of you. So rear wheel first, and I need my glasses on for this. So I can 0. Okay, it's 0.2 millimetre. So 0.2 millimetres here. Front one. Okay, it's not out of whack. Double checking, just make sure we double check both sides. Go back to the other side. Wow. 0.1 or 0, that's like negligible, doesn't exist. That's amazing. And the rear one, 0.2, is also amazing. So they are pretty much exactly in line. That's perfect. Right, the hubs. The first thing everybody wants to hear is, what does the clutch sound like? So here you go. Slow. Fast. Satisfied? Okay, now the bearings. There's two ways of doing this. Slow, just let it go very slowly. And you feel the bearings. Can't feel anything, that's good. And then faster. Let's try the front one. Now we don't have a clutch on the front one, but we do have bearings. Slow. Very good, very smooth, fast. Very good. Okay, let's pull the clutch apart and show you, just in case, paper towel. Because these are fully serviceable hubs, you don't need any special tools to pull them apart. So, for instance, this is the rear wheel, say the rotor side, you just pull it off. There's your cap, and there's inside there, your sealed bearing, and there's some grease in there. Pops back on. And the same with the other side, you can either pull out that, inspect the bearing in there, or you can pull the whole clutch off. I'll just leave that off. Pull the whole clutch off. Now, before we do that, I'll just show you there's a seal on here. Around here, there's a rubber seal around there. So that's good. Helps stop moisture and foreign matter getting into your bearings. So just pull this up. So you got 6 poles, and that's your sealed bearing there. And on the other side you got a sealed bearing there. So there's one there and one there. Now you can push this axle out if you want to, and that'll push the bearing on the other side out. And if you push it the other way, the other bearing on the other side will come up. But we're not going to do that now. There you go. Nice to see not a lot of grease in there. Some hubs you get there's too much grease. We had one guy and he had way too much grease in his, I won't say what brand, and his clutch, the poles were sticking, and then as he went to pedal it slipped around quite often and he thought something serious was wrong. Well, it would have been if it damaged it, but he caught it in time, and I cleaned it all out and just put lighter grease in and it was fine. So you don't need a lot of grease in here, because it's only going to hold dirt and moisture anyhow, and you don't want that. You want to keep it fairly clean. And on the clutch ring, this is called the clutch ring, you can see there's teeth there, and that's where the poles fall into your clutch splines there. So for greasing, thumbs up for that, very good. Winspace, not too much, not too little, and the right viscosity as well, very good. Nice even and strong spring. Excellent. Now, if and ever you need to replace your bearings, they're a common size. In your free hub body here, they're both the smaller size 6803, and in the hub body, they're the 6903. Now, all the steel bearings in the front and rear hub are ceramic. They've got stainless steel inner and outer races and ceramic balls inside. To put it back together, gravity's working against me here. And then sometimes you hold your finger there, just push it in. That's it. A little excess grease there come off. Now we'll just check out on the rear wheel the clutch engagement. That's how many clicks or engagements per revolution, one revolution of the wheel. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I've never found any great advantage or disadvantage in more engagements per revolution. Maybe if you're mountain biking, but on a road bike I don't think it matters. That's another topic on its own. Anyhow, so here's the valve. We'll start right down the bottom, hold the clutch, and we'll go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 41, 2. So there you go, 36 obviously, halfway means 72. So there's 72 clicks every revolution. So what's the big deal whether the free hub body is steel or aluminium? The big deal is you're putting on steel cassette cogs or sprockets, and those sprockets, as you push all your power or your wattage on, is going to start digging holes as each cog. Some are attached, the first 3 maybe, or the first 2, but a lot of them are also separate, and those separate ones particularly are going to start digging in with all your wattage or your power into the aluminium body, and it will leave not just marks, but it will start wearing it away, full indentations all the way around, and that cog will move ever slightly forward compared to the other cogs that you use less. With a steel hub body, that won't happen anywhere near as much, but with aluminium, it's certainly a concern. Now, one of the things you can get on some of the aluminium free hub bodies is a free hub saver. All it is a steel insert, which is sometimes bolted on or included on the free hub body, or the actual spline itself is steel. And being so much harder, it will certainly, the cogs will bind onto that, and it will certainly stop a lot of the wear on the aluminium free hub body. Now, the reason they make aluminium free hub bodies rather than steel is simply weight saving. That's all it is. So ideally, it'd be nice to have a steel body, but aluminium is lighter. The free hub body comes in Shimano SRAM, SRAM XDR, or Campagnolo. And through axle sizes, 12mm. Now, all the Winspace road hubs are centre lock rotor compatible. So if you want to use 6-bolt, then you need to get an adapter. So all your road hubs from the Winspace, centre lock. To see how tight or loose the tyres are on the rims for fitting, I used Vittorio Rubino Pro Graphene 28C with tubes. No problems there, good fitting. So there you go, we've had quite an in-depth look at the 65mm hyper wheels direct from the factory out of the box. And I'm very, very impressed. They're extremely well made. So well that I'm only going to talk about the negatives because everything else is almost perfect. First of all, aerodynamics. Very important. These wheels are deep section because they need to be aerodynamic. That's what they're supposed to be. Now, the ideal size for what everybody is racing at the moment for maximum aerodynamics using a 25 to 28C tyre happens to be an inside diameter of your rim of 21mm. This rim, of course, is 19. 2mm is not going to worry you or I, us mere mortals, but there you go for maximum, absolute maximum aerodynamics. 21 would have been nice to see. Secondly is the internal carbon work we looked at in the rim. A little bit on the messy side. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a bad performing wheel. It doesn't translate into performance, not necessarily. But nevertheless, with the technology they've got these days and bladderless carbon work for doing inside, it could have been a little bit better. That's my bit on that. And of course, lastly is just a few twisted spokes. They could have paid attention a bit more attention since they're aero wheels, especially to getting these blade spokes, every single one absolutely flat. It's not hard to do, but nevertheless that's a small issue as well. So almost spot on perfect. Of course, the real test is putting them on the bike and going for a ride and seeing how they perform. So we'll do that in a video coming up soon.